Okay, I'm Heather Ortman-Rogers, and I teach at Jennifer Junior High in Lewiston, Idaho. I am coming here because I have a vested interest in the arts and humanities standards, as well as the interdisciplinary humanities standards. So I'm going to try to address both of those maybe in one comment if I can here. So part of why I have a vested interest in these standards is that I've served on the committees that wrote some of these standards, and I am a former Idaho Association of Teachers in Language and Culture president for the Foreign Language Association. And we need to bridge the gap for our students going to the university. We need to make it possible for them to succeed in a global economy. The actual standards, which are our national world readiness standards, they address areas that the current Idaho humanities standards that were adopted in 2009 simply do not. Okay? The current standards make an assumption that the same set of standards will work for world language classrooms and music classrooms and art classrooms and dance classrooms and theater classrooms, and they simply do not. I mean, there's just no way around it. They simply do not. So consequently, Idaho education is falling behind in the areas of the arts and the humanities. We cut funding for those classes, we increase our class sizes, and then we tell our teachers to teach content using out-of-date standards and materials. So the standards are from 2009, and 7 years later, our educational outlook just doesn't look like it did in 2009. It simply does not. So we need standards that take into account the ever-changing world we live in today. We're connected to multiple cultures, languages, every single day through social media. Our students want this connection. They're hungry for this connection. We have an opportunity with the proposed standards for the arts and humanities and world language and the interdisciplinary course to give them that, to make them a part of that larger global picture. We can and should do that through the implementation of new standards that will open doors for our kids and allow them to pursue careers, degrees inside of Idaho as well as outside of our borders. It's going to help our kids immensely in the future. It just keeps all of the doors open for them. The proposed standards address that need. I mean, they just simply do that. The performance indicators are a perfect supplement to the arts and humanities standards. They're there to show a kid on a learning continuum, to show where do they start and where they end. And not saying that in 1 year this kid's going to learn this much and every other kid's going to learn this much, but it's a continuum of learning. The performance standards are in place. They do that well. We don't have that in the 2009 document. It simply doesn't exist. So right now when a student ends first year Spanish, they need to be in the exact same place as every other first year Spanish student. They need to speak the same amount. They need to be able to handle that. That's simply not happening in our classrooms. A child who's artistic is going to excel in certain areas in the arts, where a child who is not artistic is not going to grow at the same rate. So the performance indicators are an integral piece of this documentation that we don't have in the current standards. We need that. And so we need to have the new standards for the arts and humanities. It's a necessary change. I mean, I know it seems like it's only 7 years, but the world's changed a lot in 7 years. We really have shifted what we do. So in October, we opened this up for public comment. The window went open, and there really weren't a lot of negative comments. They came back to us as a committee. We saw those. Peggy shared those with us. But they didn't apply to the standards themselves. They were curricular. They were, how do I implement this in my classroom? What do we do with this in my room? How do we deal with this in an end-of-course assessment given by my district? It wasn't really commentary towards the standards. We're seeing the same thing 6 months later. 6 months later, we're still seeing that the majority of the comments coming before the committee are not around the new standards. They're actually about how do we implement it in our own building, which for me says not that we need to adopt new standards. It says that the teachers of Idaho are asking, how do we do this in our classroom? How do we make this work? Because what we have currently does not work. They wouldn't be asking the question if what they had currently worked. So we need to, at least in my opinion, we need to adopt a new set of standards for arts and humanities. And not just for world language. I mean, we need to look at world language as a separate document. We need to look at art and music and media arts and theater and dance and I don't think I missed anything. And interdisciplinary, all as separate documents, and they need to be that way. The interdisciplinary humanities course is a course that's unique in and of itself, and it's probably one that much of Idaho is not terribly familiar with. The committee came together to create a document for this particular course and standards for this very particular course. And the design or the plan of that was to create this fused curriculum. That means you're going to fuse more than one content area equally in your classroom. And it's not about having a history course where you put up a piece of art one day a semester. It's about actually fusing art and history together. And I think that one of the valuable things in the interdisciplinary humanities standards that are there are the creative and reflective elements that exist, because those creative and reflective elements, they're really what set the course apart and change it from any other previous guidelines. They say that you're going to be able to study history, you're going to be able to look at the world, you're going to be able to see world religions, and then we're going to apply it somewhere, because I'm going to have to create something, and I'm going to have to tell you why that piece I created has value to what I learned. And that is huge. And the interdisciplinary humanities standards, they don't tie a kid to being a hands-on sculpture artist. They give us the option to integrate computer science. They give us the option to say, okay, I've learned something in history, and now I'm going to pull literally science, regular science into it. Or I'm going to be able to talk about how this affected athletes in history. That option is wonderful. I think the sets of standards that we have for arts and humanities and interdisciplinary are fabulous at this point. So I would hope that the state of Idaho sees that and that we're able to adopt the new standards.
Do you have any questions for Peggy?
Do I have questions for Peggy?
Yes.
Do we have questions for Peggy, Mary? Always. Oh, well, I didn't ask you. I don't know that I do. I mean, I think for me, my questions have been answered. I'm at a point where I think this is something we need to do for Idaho.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Do you want me to respond?
If you'd like to. Go ahead.
Thank you,
me to
Heather.
stay?
Yes, I do.
Do you want to talk more? You want to talk to me?
Thank you, Heather. As you can see, Heather is a teacher who has her hand in media arts classroom. She teaches English. She knows a lot about design.
English, Spanish,
she
and graphic
teaches
design
Spanish.
family.
And
Yep.
so she was the perfect person to bring together this interdisciplinary rewrite and to help clarify a problem that we've had in Idaho, which has been, if you didn't know what to count it as interdisciplinary, and thus we have a real overlog of unclear statements about what is interdisciplinary coursework. But also, I really want to congratulate our team, the world language team, for stepping ahead. We have come so far since 2000 when we wrote the very first standards, and the State Board of Education presented us with literally 15 disciplines and said, you have to write one set of standards. So we've gotten that. We got a little ways in 2008, 9, and now we've moved now towards 21st century language standards. So thank you very much.
Thank you.